The Lives of the Saints by Father Alban Butler, November 13th, Pope St. Nicholas I. When Nicholas I died on November 13th, 867, after 9 years of pontificate, all men of goodwill mourned him. The Romans considered the downpours that then fell on Rome as a sign of heaven's sorrow, because the late pope had truly deserved the titles of saint and great that future generations were to give him. One of his contemporaries wrote, "Since the time of the blessed Gregory the Great, no one had occupied the papal chair who could be compared to him. Nicholas gave orders to kings and lords as if he were the master of the world. He was gentle, kind, and modest, with good bishops and priests and with good Christians. On the other hand, he was hard and terrible with the wicked. It can be said with truth that God gave us in him a second Elijah." In fact, Nicholas I was the greatest pope between Gregory I and Hildebrand. He belonged to a distinguished Roman family, and Sergius II took him into his service. St. Leo IV and Benedict III also employed him. When the latter died in 858, Nicholas, who was only a deacon, was elected pope. His first problem was to deal with the delicate situation of Constantinople, which was the second see of Christendom. In our article on St. Ignatius of Constantinople, October 23rd, we recounted how Bardas Caesar and Emperor Michael II dispossessed the patriarch of his see and put Photius in his place. Other complications ensued, and the whole pontificate of St. Nicholas suffered because of the difficult relations between Rome and Constantinople. In this connection, St. Nicholas I received a letter from the newly baptized Bulgarian monarch, Boris, who asked him several questions. St. Nicholas' reply was, "A masterpiece of pastoral prudence which constitutes one of the most beautiful documents in the history of the past." The saint reproached Boris for the cruelty with which he treated the pagans and forbade him to try to convert them by force. Likewise, he urged the Bulgarians to be less superstitious, less cruel in war, and not to use torture. Naturally, St. Nicholas would have wanted this new portion of Christianity to submit to his authority, but Boris finally chose the authority of Constantinople. St. Nicholas was a courageous defender of the integrity of marriage, of the weak and oppressed, and of the equality of all men before the law of God. Not only did he have to defend the sacrament of marriage against King Lotarius of Lorraine, but also against the complacent bishops who had approved his divorce and remarriage. When Charles the Bald of Burgundy got the Frankish bishops to excommunicate his daughter Judith for having married Baldwin of Flanders without her father's permission, Nicholas intervened in favor of the freedom of marriage, recommended to the bishops to be less severe in the future, and asked Hincmar of Reims to try to reconcile Charles with his daughter. Hincmar was undoubtedly an outstanding figure among the bishops of the Middle Ages, but he was a proud and ambitious man. On the occasion of the appeal to the Holy See, made by one of Hincmar's suffragans against the sentence of his metropolitan, St. Nicholas I, as well as other popes, had to force the latter to recognize the right of the Holy See to intervene in matters of importance. St. Nicholas also twice excommunicated Archbishop John of Ravenna because of the intolerance with which he treated his suffragans and other members of the clergy, and also because he openly opposed the decisions of Rome. Because of his attitude, the Pope acquired the fame of being a just and firm judge, and many people of all social classes and from all parts of Europe went to him in demand of justice. With the fall of Charlemagne's empire, the situation of the Western Church was very delicate. When Nicholas I ascended the pontifical throne, the nobles granted and seized episcopal sees at will and often placed them in the hands of young, inexperienced, and even vicious bishops. The weapon of excommunication was constantly employed without the least discretion, and was so for a long time. The contempt with which some members of the clergy were regarded had turned into contempt for the offices they held. Finally, penitential practices had degenerated or fallen into oblivion, with the result that a great corruption of morals had taken place. St. Nicholas did all he could to oppose these abuses during his brief pontificate and tirelessly combated wickedness and injustice, both among the high and low clergy and among the laity. St. Nicholas was certainly not without ambition, but his aim was to place the Holy See in a privileged position so that it could do greater good to souls. The Anglican Millman wrote in this regard, "If Nicholas I treated the kings of France contemptuously, we must recognize that the royal power had earned the contempt of the whole world. True, Nicholas annulled a decree of a national synod made up of the most distinguished prelates of Gaul, but the synod had already been condemned by all those who were in favor of justice and innocence. When a scandal or disorder arose, the pontiff left no rest to his body, nor repose to his members, until he had done all he could to bring about the remedy. St. Nicholas was especially solicitous in the affairs of his diocese, without, however, neglecting the affairs of all Christendom. For example, he kept a list of all the invalids of Rome, to whom he sent food daily to their homes. Moreover, at the pontiff's palace, provisions were distributed to the poor who were not destitute. Each one received a kind of stub on which was marked the day of the week on which he was to present himself to collect the provisions. St. Nicholas's health was not very strong, and the energy with which he worked eventually ruined it. Our Heavenly Father, wrote the pontiff, has been pleased to visit me with such severe pains that not only do they not allow me to answer your questions personally, but not even to dictate my answers. Death befell him in Rome on November 13, 867. Without Nicholas the Great, whose feast is celebrated every year in Rome, he was a man patient and moderate, humble and chaste, with a beautiful face and pleasant presence. He expressed himself with great wisdom and modesty, as if unaware of the greatness of his actions. He was very penitent and a lover of the sacred mysteries, a friend of widows and orphans, and a champion of all Christianity. Liber Pontificalis. When St. Nicholas lay unconscious on his deathbed, one of his servants stole the money he had collected for the poor.